Okay, so we will call the meeting to order and I'll turn it over to Stephanie to do that. And hopefully we can make up some time here.
Yes, I'm just going to call the roll. And this is an acknowledgement that all of the teleconference locations have signed on. This is a roll call for the actual directors that are participating. So Ava Community Energy,
Here.
Central Coast Community Energy,
Here.
Clean Power San Francisco,
Yes, here.
Peninsula Clean Energy,
Here.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority,
Here.
San Jose Clean Energy,
Here.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy,
Here.
Sonoma Clean Power Authority, Valley Clean Energy. So 7 present, 2 absent, Madam Chair.
Great. Okay, so with that, we do have a quorum and we are on to item 3, which are any matters subsequent to posting the agenda. Any board member have any item subsequent to posting the agenda they would want to discuss? Okay, I'm going to move to public comment. Any public comment on item 3? Okay, I'm not hearing any. So we are on to item number 5, which is the consent agenda. And we have one item there, which are the minutes from December 17th. Any questions or motions on that item?
Move approval.
Second.
Great. Okay, before we go to vote, any member of the public wanting to comment on the consent agenda? Okay, I'm not hearing any, so I think we're ready to vote.
Ava Community Energy,
Aye.
Central Coast Community Energy,
Yes.
Clean Power San Francisco,
Yes.
Peninsula Clean Energy,
Yes.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority,
Um, I, if I have to, or yes, if that's okay.
okay, San Jose Clean Energy,
Yes.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Great. So we're on to our regular agenda, item 6A, which is approval of the HydroStore project, and I'll pass it over to Alex.
Thank you, board members. It's good to see everyone, and I'm pleased to present you with resolution associated with agenda item 6A. What you have before you now is a resolution that would authorize CC Power to enter into the associated contracts for the HydroStore Willow Rock project. Um, any approval ultimately would require the board to approve CC Power to move forward, and then each member has their own approval process. And so the contract requires both the CC Power approval and the participating members' boards or whatever decision making they have to approve. A little bit about HydroStore, and I think this is an exciting opportunity. We've been working on this for a long time as members have supported our phase 2 efforts to yield a binding contract opportunity for HydroStore. The total project is a 500 megawatt, 8-hour compressed air energy storage in Kern County. And for our CC Power Slice, we would be contracting for 50 megawatts of the 8-hour storage. The COD we're targeting is 2030. And this would also help members comply with any long duration storage obligations they may have. Although we know that some members are looking at this also from a technology diversity standpoint of diversifying their storage portfolio to some degree with non-lithium ion technologies. The specifics of the contract are that this is an RA plus attributes contract. There's a lot of rigor that went into this in designing the contract for an 8-hour energy storage resource of non-lithium efficiencies. And so we're doing that through this top 4, bottom 4 energy settlement function, and a lot of details can be shared about that. HydroStore is a unique project. It has a 1.8 billion DOE loan guarantee. Our understanding is that loan guarantee is still secure. I know other loan guarantee provisions from the DOE have been rescinded or are being explored for being rescinded, but that probably, as we understand it, will not apply here. The project's slated to use strong labor agreements and will have a lot of jobs associated with the project when they're particularly in construction time, which they plan to start in 2026. The project also recently received the right approvals it needed from a permitting standpoint from the CEC. So they are now in a position of really being able to move forward and break ground. Stephanie, next slide, please. Wanted to share a tiny bit about the technology. Many of you may be familiar with compressed air energy storage as opposed to potential energy storage or chemical energy storage associated with lithium-ion batteries. But in this case, there's an underground cavern where you can compress the air. And there's a couple unique features to the HydroStore technology. One is that they use a surface reservoir and then inject water to keep the underground area pressurized while the air gets squeezed back out to run a turbine generator. So that's what the water does on that surface reservoir and how they link that back into the underground cavern. Another distinct feature of it is how they capture thermal energy in the compression cycle. And then they store that thermal energy and then they reapply that thermal energy to heat up the air when they expand it out of the underground cavern. So that expansion typically cools the air significantly. And so a lot of compressed air, including a site in Europe, uses natural gas to heat the air when they expand it. But in this case, they're avoiding that. So it's an emissions-free technology model. And we thought that was another exciting part of this project. So this gives you a quick feel of the technology. And obviously, this is a simplified version, but this really is the working parts of it and what would go into the project. Next slide. So what you have again in this resolution is the resource adequacy plus bottom four agreement. The specific name of the HydroStore site is the Willow Rock site, and it's called the GEM A Case LLC. Also in the agreement is authorization for CC Power to sign onto the project participation share agreement. We have 6 participating members, including San Francisco PCE, RCEA, San Jose, Silicon Valley, and VCE. And then associated with that is also the bioliability pass-through agreements, or BLIPTAs. And those sort of address some of the step-up provisions and how the members would be working together collaboratively in case any party struggles to fulfill their contractual agreements. So that's what's before you now. And I think just one final picture here on the next slide shows how our agreement structure works. This is exactly how the other major power procurement agreements have worked, where you have a contract with the developer backed by the project participation share agreement, and then working in collaboration with that is the buyer liability pass-through agreements, or BLIPTAs. And so CC Power is well positioned to execute on a contract of this nature. And at this point, I can hand it back to you, Chair Mitchell, and I would welcome any discussion or questions I can answer.
Yeah, great. Any questions or discussions by board members? Yeah, Monica.
Yeah, thank you, General Manager Morris, for the presentation. I just wanted to let you all know that SBCE's board reviewed and approved this item, or that is our participation in this project at our last board meeting. So we're on board to move forward. I think our interest is really the diversification aspect. And so, but certainly excited about having some backup to our compliance mandates as well, just in case we know things fall through sometimes. So thank you so much. I will support this.
Yeah, great, Monica. Rob.
Thank you, Chair Mitchell. Central Coast Community Energy is an off-taker from the Willow Rock project already. And I just want to appreciate the work that staff have done, Alex and Philippe and the working group, around bringing more CCAs to the project. I think it sort of speaks volumes that in terms of who is looking at and actually putting commitments around diversity in energy storage. addressing sort of community concerns about over deployment or reliance on lithium, but also looking at sort of what the grid needs from a long duration portfolio mix. So I think it speaks volumes that it is CCAs, it's public power that's participating in that. So really supportive of it and appreciate the work that staff has done.
Great. Any other comments on this item? Yeah, Howard.
Some of this is addressed in the memo itself, just in regards to all members are asked to take action here and move to approve the recommendation, while 6 parties are specifically a party to the or sort of sub-participants. I just want to clarify, maybe this is for you, Jim Morris, to the extent, because it specifically notes, approval by the various CCAs is a condition precedent to the overall agreement. And so I just wanted to clarify, to the extent some CCAs approve it and, probably low risk scenario that other CCAs don't, but to the extent that does happen, how would that get worked through in the ONY agreement?
Yeah, great question. So the agreement's not in force until all the participating members sign and CC Power sign. So the first step today was for the board to authorize CC Power to sign, and that's for the entire board. After that, if the agreement is enacted, then per the CC Power Joint Powers Authority agreement, only the participating members vote on project-specific matters. But since we're not there yet, it's open for the whole board. And then there's also this question you have of if one of the members and their respective boards chooses not to do it, then the agreement is not in force. If the agreement is in force, we then have step-up provisions in case a member wants to drop out. But that all is predicated on the agreement as structured going into being enacted. And so it won't be enacted if not all members sign on. And if that's what happens, then we would be back into a phase 2 with the members who might be interested and could renegotiate from there.
Got it. Thank you for that.
Great. Any other discussion on this item? Okay, I will go to public comment. Any member of the public wanting to comment on this item? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I think we're ready to vote.
Well, I move approval.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we need a motion.
And I'll
Thank you.
second it.
All right.
Sean, thank you.
Fine, either way.
All right, now we are ready to vote.
Ava Community Energy,
Yes.
Central Coast Community Energy,
Yes.
Clean Power San Francisco,
Yes.
Peninsula Clean Energy,
Yes.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority,
Yes.
San Jose Clean Energy,
Yes.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Great. Okay, so we are on to item 6B, which is review and approve 3 geothermal exclusivity, offtake, and development engagement agreements. And I'll pass it back to Alex.
Thank you, everybody. So I'm also excited to present you with the 3 geothermal agreements, which are cleverly named the geode agreements. And you may, of course, know that a geode is not geothermal, but it has geo in the name. But this is where we landed with the agreements. As many of you recall, we've socialized some of the preliminary work here with the board previously back in November. We got some helpful feedback about shifting these agreements to be more milestone related and have more specific rights. And so I'll try and elaborate on what's in the agreements and why we think this is a prudent step for CC Power. The background here was that all 9 members are participating in a phase 2 to explore and pursue geothermal offtake through CC Power. As many of you know, there's not a surfeit of geothermal contract opportunities that are always ripe when you go out and solicit the market. And so what this phase 2 has done is it's tried to incubate and create real opportunities for accessing binding contracts on geothermal by working with developers in the right ways under the right conditions to help them through some of their preliminary development cycles so that we're in a position for offtake. And ultimately, the most important parts of these agreements are the requests or ROFRs, right of first refusals for capacity or exclusivity agreements. There's three counterparties, so there are three agreements, and I'm happy to speak to any of them. And I'd also like to really credit um, Philippe and his team for the extensive work and diligence and critical review of all the contracts. Sonoma and San Francisco CCAs for their help in leading and shepherding the working group of members to come to these agreements. And then also the board for helping us think through and be as smart and opportunistic as we could for lining up useful options on geothermal capacity for your portfolios. So the counterparties we have are Atlantica, XGS, and Zanskar. Each one of these counterparties was selected from 14 proposals through an RFI. We looked specifically at how emerging technologies in geothermal could yield important or viable opportunities with an eye towards California-based geothermal. So throughout this and evaluating the offers, we were looking for projects that would yield important technology advancements and important and real and hopefully California specific geothermal opportunities for you all. Part of the structure is that these projects and many geothermal technologies are in this gap where the projects that exist already or are contract ready are being contracted for or have been. But there's a whole new tranche of technologies being brought to bear on for geothermal development that are in the development process, but not yet ripe. Some of these technologies would include enhanced geothermal or advanced geothermal. And broadly, this is using more sophisticated or advanced underground exploration and site selection, and then heat extraction methodologies for improving geothermal opportunities. Some of you also know we had a education session that really walked through the state of affairs of geothermal development in the West and in California. And part of that was to really understand what's reasonable from a contracting standpoint in terms of working with geothermal counterparties to get valuable opportunities for geothermal when they're in this development cycle, particularly early in it. So the agreements we have here in these geo agreements gives us ROFRs or exclusivity. And in response, our obligations are to provide non-binding engagement and feedback with the developers, and then potentially support. And I wanted to speak to that word support specifically. Some of what this non-binding support would be is that CC Power is in a position to communicate back to members updates on the sites, work with and hear from the developer on how their permitting process is going. And then also some of that could look like information on the viability and year online dates for some of these projects so that if members are interested, they could start to include that in their long-term planning portfolios, which would also then inform transmission planning. So there's a lot of ways where just the information we would get and can feed back to members could be useful for the counterparty. But in terms of what we're obligated to do, it's quite limited here, and it's really the engagement and feedback to the counterparty only. So I'm happy to answer questions, and I know these are lengthy agreements, but I wanted to just end, Chair Mitchell, with this idea that I think these are one of the most or only opportunities we've been able to cultivate for you all for future geothermal capacity at very low cost. We know that you all and the board wants CC Power focusing on high value add opportunities. And so most of the work now for these geo agreements is complete. And what would happen going forward is these agreements would simmer and at very low cost and with low oversight needs be able to allow us to work and incubate this option for you all if it's approved. So Chair Mitchell, hopefully I've addressed that angle of it, and I'm happy to elaborate on any other questions that come up.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions or discussion by the board? Yeah, Monica.
Sorry, excuse me, sorry,
Okay.
coughing. Sorry. Certainly support the development of geothermal. I think that it's important for us for many, many reasons, including reliability, clean attributes, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm all for any way that we can get this to work. I just have a couple of questions and then just really maybe for my own benefit, an understanding of what it really means to have a ROFR or a ROFO. I think these are ROFRs, right of first request, first are they ROFOs or ROFRs?
ROFRs, so right of first refusal on
Refusal, right.
capacity, and then also exclusivity. So it depends on the counterparty. We've negotiated different terms. Go
Okay.
ahead.
And because we haven't really talked about price, because I didn't see price anywhere, your comment about very low price seems a little bit premature
Oh.
to me, given that the price will be determined when that ROFR gets exercised, right? We don't know what the price is for these resources at this point.
Correct. So when I said low cost, I mean low CC power cost, meaning there's
Okay.
low opportunity cost. We're not going to have to spend a ton of time or dollars managing these contracts if they get authorized by you guys.
Great. Okay, thank you. And I do think this is much improvement from the last time we spoke about these and what the agreement looked like and what the commitments were on both sides. They still have a little bit of hesitation, and I think it's just something that we need to get comfortable with, and maybe it's a function or a question of how the oversight happens on these contracts, because these aren't necessarily phase 3 contracts, right? They're still under phase 1 or phase 2, phase 1.
Yeah, we would think of these as phase 2. They're still not a long-term PPA contract of a sort of phase 3 nature. You might start to think of these as a phase 2B.
Uh-huh.
And if it helps, Director Padilla, we also have our upcoming budget cycle and 2026, 2027 work plan. So that would be a time where we could work with members on how supportive they are of these ongoing contracts and if there's a time where they want to cycle them down or not.
Okay, so my question is, I think was, so what will be the oversight from at our staff level, that is the CCA staff level that are participating in this, to ensure that the information exchange and the level of support that we provide these 3 developers, again, I think my personal or SBCE's hesitation or concern is about advocacy and what level of advocacy we do. And so where will the oversight exist for that to ensure that that's not happening? Or if it is happening, that we're at least aware of it so that we can realign advocacy in other areas if we need to.
Excellent question. So the plan is to do no advocacy outside of the direction of the board. Specifically on these projects, the model we use is to have a project advisory subcommittee, including with a chair and vice chair. So members have direct staff sort of engagement in the day-to-day or week-to-week operations and management of these contracts. And also typically the project advisory subcommittees will meet once a month to get updates. And that would be sort of the venue for the information sharing and getting direction back. As you may know, the way we operate these PASs or project advisory subcommittees is we operate them somewhat formally. So these are not official Brown Act committees. They are staff level committees, but we still do use votes from members to get a clear sense of what the members support and what the members don't support, so that we're working hard to always be aligned and within the direction of the membership for each project.
So you won't be coming back to the board for direction on advocacy. It'll be at the staff level. You're not proposing an ad hoc committee of some sort of this board.
Well, no, not here, but I would say as the general manager, we will not take any advocacy. And it depends what you mean by advocacy, but specific types of advocacy like communicating with legislators, that type of thing we would only do with the express authorization of the board. So as we manage these contracts, we would not do any of that. Even at the direction of the staff subcommittees, we would only do that in conjunction with direction from the board.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Monica. Rob.
Director Shaw, you're still muted on our end.
Appreciate that. Thank you. No, I was appreciative of the work that the staff has done, as Director Padilla mentioned, sort of improving the structure of the agreements. And I attended the information session, and I thought that Mr. Tracy and staff did a fantastic job sort of walking through what they're seeing as challenges in the geospace, the different technologies, how we sort of got to the thinking of doing this process. So really supportive of the efforts that we've undertaken. I do have some concerns, and they continue to be around whether or not this is the right approach for this kind of engagement. And I think maybe just a couple of questions before before we have to vote. So I have a couple here. Can you talk a little bit about how these agreements specifically are going to reduce the development risk that geothermal is facing?
Certainly, and Philippe, I'd like you to be available just in case additional technical questions come up. So, Director Shaw, as you saw from the education session, that focused in part on the perspective of developers and the uncertainties they have in site selection, transmission, connection, and then also permitting. So, in addition to well, I'd say those are the three big categories. And so, having visibility to a potential off-taker like you guys through CC Power does help them. It helps them know that if they raise money to place bets on sites, that they have a potential off-taker who's of interest. It also knows that they may have counterparties like CCAs that could potentially include them in their portfolio, which would then help address some of the transmission risk. So in those two ways in particular, with fundraising and with sort of a dealing with the risk and then also with transmission access, it can reduce the risk that developers face. We also feel that the nature of geothermal is it's a long-term development resource. And so this type of collaboration, we do think positions us to work closely with them and have potential offtake opportunities, not only through the ROFRs, but just relationally in ways that could be helpful and valuable to the members.
Chair, just a few more if I can. I appreciate that, Alex. Am I right that we haven't had any conversations with financial institutions about how they make financing or capital decisions with respect to geothermal project development?
That's not accurate. So even in exploring these agreements, one of the counterparties, and again, we've been very transparent that we have not agreed to anything yet, but one of the counterparties did have a financing attendee on a call, and we've subsequently, so I think it was helpful for that counterparty in terms of their fundraising. We have seen that play out over the last week, actually, that I don't know exactly how much our role was there, but we know that it was important to the counterparty for us to be able to answer a few questions about the nature of these agreements, which is what we did. And we saw that was helpful for them. So I think there is value for the counterparties here.
Yeah, no, I understand, but we haven't seen financing institutions modeling for how they make those decisions, capital outlay decisions.
Yeah.
And there's no purchase, there's no purchase requirement. There's the ROFO or the right of first
refusal. Mm-hmm.
Right. Is there any penalty for developers for not delivering and meeting their obligations under the agreements?
Yeah, Philippe, do you mind queuing up? Thank you.
No, there's not an explicit penalty for that failure to meet their obligations. This is ultimately the agreement has many non-binding provisions, both on us and on the counterparty. The intent is that there is a binding ROFO and exclusivity provisions, but both parties are maturing a relationship that's mutually beneficial through the structure that we've implemented, with the plan that will continue to mature that through subsequent agreements later on as more tangible value propositions emerge.
And as I read the agreements, there's no limitation on CC Powers or any individual CCA's ability to engage, negotiate, and contract with a different geothermal technology.
Correct.
So I'll just share, and hopefully everyone is thinking about this and maybe it's a question, General Manager Morris, as we move down this path, how do you intend to communicate with the board members regarding the feasibility, the reality, and deliverability of any actual generation under these agreements, so that we know how we should be engaging with other counterparties and planning our longer term portfolio concerns?
Excellent question, Director Shaw. I think, and this may not fully address it, and I'll take all of your smart words into consideration here, but from our process standpoint, we still view ourselves as in a phase two. And so a lot of what we do in phase two is we're really trying to incubate sufficient deal opportunities so that you as a member can decide if you're in or out. And really for the longer term commitment. The phase twos are sort of short term commitments where we're looking for a binding deal. So one thing we've considered for these is as we get more visibility and we then move them into a phase three decision for the membership. So that would be a really clear moment for you where you say, okay, here's more specificity on this agreement. Are we in or out? Here's pricing information or more concrete milestones and teeth so that you have a choice to really take it seriously or less so at that juncture. And so we would use our process of moving from a phase 2B to a sort of phase 3 agreement decision at some point. And as I mentioned before, this would also come up through the budgeting and work planning process, which occurs annually.
Thank you, General Manager Morris. And should the board approve them, I'm fully supportive in working directly and closely with you and your staff to make them very successful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Howard.
Thanks. And appreciate the questions coming from Director Shaw and Padilla. I echo some of those sentiments. I'll quickly say I absolutely support the concepts here, the intentions here, which is to try to find ways to diversify our clean renewable energy portfolios, and geothermal is a critical avenue to do that. I also have shared in the sort of cautiousness of this approach. These are sort of generally non-binding, low risk, and it also sounds like low effort type arrangements. For me, I've noted this before, they still feel a lot more like MOUs than anything else. I know we're calling it a little different, and we're trying to firm up the expectations in terms of how we and the geothermal entities are supporting one another through information and whatnot. But at the end of the day, without security, an exclusivity arrangement only carries so much value in them. So just want to flag that sort of cautiousness of the amount of time and effort and resourcing that we'll put into these agreements. But it's sounding like from your perspective, the expectation is that it's a fairly low investment of time and resources. So with that in mind, I'm generally supportive. A few quick questions I'll ask. Can you share a little bit more in terms of the types of insights that we anticipate sharing? Because I think that's one of the key things that we are providing in this arrangement. And just wanted to get a little bit of a better sense of, the sensitivity of that information, how we will share that, what kinds of information we'll share. That's question number one. Maybe I'll just pause there first for a response.
Yeah, great. Philippe, can you share a little bit about what we plan to package and share back to the counterparties?
Yeah, we'll be getting a fair amount of information about the development of the projects and, in the case of some of these developers, their technology that they're deploying with respect to new AGS technology. And so from that information, we'll be able to do modeling to assess, like, how does this actually translate into market value in the wholesale markets? We can provide feedback about where projects might wish to interconnect that may be of more value to CC Power members, where they're as monetized at a forecasted nodal value at a certain location, or where there might be congestion that we may wish to avoid versus perhaps more qualitative attributes. Like, we'd like to see local jobs created in this area that has geothermal resource potential. And so our preference would be to have you develop that site versus this other alternative. So there is benefit to CC Power members in being able to help shape where some of these greenfield development projects ultimately mature. Additionally, we can provide feedback with respect to um, like how, when we would want these projects to come online, how much quantity we're interested in. Um, Pricing may be too high for us. We may say, like, you got to bring those prices down if you really want us to continue express interest in an offtake from this. So really, the intent is to shape a product that ultimately meets the desired objectives for the members from these different resources. We have three complementary parties. We can help they basically work through the situations with each one of these parties so that we have choices from which we can go and contract, and we can simultaneously try to advance the technology and promote more investments and jobs and supply in California that ultimately helps drive down costs.
Got it. Thanks. I have a few other quick questions. I'll try to move quickly. My other question is there's a section around financial considerations and potentially being sort of co-applicants on grants or incentives. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Just I see that as an area of potential concern of if we're going to actually be, supporting them, whether it's through letters and endorsements or actually through actual applicants for who knows what incentives may be available out there. So I don't know how tangible that is, but just wanted to get a sense of both if there's anything real there that you anticipate, and two, is there a process here to ensure that we are doing some level of review or approval of that, or is that anticipated to be delegated to General Manager Morris?
Yeah, so again, this is non-binding, first of all, and is at the discretion of CC Power and its members. But yeah, there are certain grants that may be available to emerging technologies, such as these types of geothermal development opportunities. And in certain circumstances, there are grants available only to nonprofits or governmental entities who may be partnering with a for-profit entity. So there could be situations where it makes sense for CC Power to be a joint applicant to secure funding for a demonstration project or an initial commercial project of something like this nature. We would expect that things like a letter of support would be within the realm of what CC Power could go and pursue to help advance the interest that a developer may have in applying for a specific grant. But certainly, if there's something more involved, that would be something that we would certainly discuss within the project advisory subcommittee and make sure it's fully transparent.
And if I may, Director Chang, building on what Philippe said, you also know we have the strategic priority of technology, emerging technologies. And so we're going to work on fleshing that out. So in this agreement that's before you now, yes, it's included as an idea. That's non-binding, and so it is in scope. But I would say the way I view it is we want to firm up our understanding and clarity of how the board interprets how we should pursue emerging technologies. And then that would then govern how we react to any requests for that type of support here. And like Philippe said, I think a letter of support that just publicly states that we have these agreements is one thing versus actually signing up for any sort of obligation under a grant is a whole different level and something that I would bring back to the board for consideration and discussion.
Thanks. And then last question kind of area is, are there any specific sites actually identified under these agreements? I don't know if it's blacked out or it's not. Wanted to understand if those are sort of explicit and those are under exclusivity, or is it all the development that these developers are doing, within California are able to deliver into California?
Yes, two of the agreements have specific sites contemplated, one of which the ROFO extends beyond that to incremental development thereafter within California. And then the third is for new greenfield development to be commenced in California that's not site specific, but is focused within the CAISO.
Again, Director Chang, we were very interested in site specific type of work because we want to make sure we don't hold up any work that CCAs are doing as they counterparty, as they collect, seek agreements for geothermal. So our process is cleaner when we know the site And sort of that's sort of in the CC Power queue versus us releasing it out and making sure members know we're not involved. So that's still something that we want to keep an eye on, but that's why we focused on site-specific opportunities where that was available to us.
Got it. Thanks for those insights. I'll say I cautiously support this, understanding there's low risk, low liability to us to signing these, but still wonder what value will translate. But given the difficulties of developing geothermal, I'm generally supportive, and I think the greatest risk is just bandwidth from CC Power staff, and confidentiality of any information that we're providing to these counterparties. But generally support it. Thanks.
Great. Monica.
Yeah, when I read through the agreements, something did jump out at me, and then I heard something I think that Howard said, or maybe you said, Philippe, and I just want to make sure I understand this. It is not our intent, I hope at least it should never be our intent, to help developers value their projects to then turn around and tell us how much we should pay for it, right? That's not what we're doing here. We're not giving them a blueprint on how much to seek in terms of price from us.
Correct. It would be more directional of we would have a preference for a given site versus another, or there's ways that you can contribute incremental value. For example, obviously like peak hours in the summertime have greater value, but perhaps in the future, like winter peaking needs might be of more value. So there's things like that that might contribute towards shaping ultimately the product that is delivered that are valuable to both parties in terms of aligning interests.
Okay, because at the end of the day, we're not partners. There's still going to be a seller and we're still going to be a buyer. So we're going to be on opposite ends of what we want, right? And so my caution is, again, I'm kind of like with Howard, I want to support this cautiously, that we don't go down a path where we start to act like partners. We're not partners at the end of the day. We don't have a vested interest in this in terms of we don't get a stake in this long-term project. So.
Any other questions or discussion on this item? Okay, I'm going to go to public comment. Any member of the public wanting to comment on this item? You can raise your hand. Right, I'm not seeing any. So are there any motions? I will motion to approve. Is there a second?
Barbara seconding.
Great. I think we are ready to vote then.
Ava Community Energy,
Yes.
Central Coast Community Energy,
No.
Clean Power San Francisco,
Yes.
Peninsula Clean Energy,
Yes.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority,
Yes.
San Jose Clean Energy,
Yes.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy.
Yes.
That motion passes 6-1.
Great. So now we are on to item 6C, which is review and approval of our officer elections. So really happy to hear from some of you in terms of nominations for the officers next year. Hopefully all of you got a chance to read the packet, but the nominations are Rob Shaw for president, Howard Chang, vice president, Mitch Sears would stay on as treasurer, and then Monica Padillo as secretary. So I am happy to hear any discussion on this item or other nominations by members. Or a motion.
I'll move.
Great.
Second.
Great. Any other discussion on this item?
Thank you for your continued service and new service, some of you. Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you, Lori,
Yes.
for running the show for the last
And
year.
great, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Do we have to formalize our acceptance of the nomination in some way, shape, or form? Right?
We are going to vote on it, so you get to vote.
Silence is implicit acceptance. Is that just we're on the same page?
You're voluntold, Howard. We will go to the public first for any comment by members of the public before we vote. And then yes, Howard, you can vote. Any member of the public wanting to comment on this item? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I think we can move on to the vote.
Ava Community Energy,
I think that's you, Howard.
Oh,
maybe we lost-
sorry, my internet may be a little bit spotty. Was I asked to vote there?
yeah. Ava
Yes.
Community Energy, Central
Yeah.
Coast Community Energy,
Yes.
Clean Power San Francisco,
Yes.
Peninsula Clean Energy,
Yes.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority,
Yes.
San Jose Clean Energy,
Yes.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy.
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously.
All right. Well, thank you so much, incoming officers. Yeah, can't wait to see all that you will do. And it's been a great 2 years, and I will still be here as a board member, but hand over the officer role after this meeting. Those roles start. So we will go on to our last item, which is item 60, which is our GM report.
Thank you, Chair Mitchell, and it is a moment to recognize you for your years of serving as an officer of CC Power. So I wanted to just personally say thank you. You've been wonderful to work with. I'm glad you're, of course, staying on as the board, but it's sad to have you step down, although you've earned a well-deserved break. And to the new officers, thank you in advance. I really look forward to working with everybody, and we have a busy year ahead. So that's a good segue into the GM report. I wanted to share some of what's coming, and of course, happy to answer any questions. But really importantly, we're entering into the work planning and budget process for 2026 to 2027. And I just wanted to share a little bit about this to help everybody understand how we're thinking about it. The plan for the upcoming year from a work plan standpoint is to make sure we're operating very clearly within the strategic priorities that the board adopted. And those priorities, as you recall, are sort of the right specific niches of procurement to help, playing a role for looking at ownership opportunities, and then working on emerging technologies and sort of helping the CCAs look at the right ways to have exposure or to risk share in certain emerging technologies with an eye towards generation types or energy storage types. So you'll see a lot more information about that, but those are what we expect will be on the menu of work. And then we're also this year looking at fleshing out, when we build this menu, fleshing out more of the costs and scope elements to it so that when it does come before you from a menu standpoint, it's not just saying, hey, maybe you want a hamburger or a steak. It's sort of saying, here's the costs of each one of these things, and tell us what we should put into the budget and work plan. So it'll help everybody make decisions more rationally as we get into it. And the approach, and this will all be playing out over the coming months, is to, again, have CC Power meet directly with each member. And ideally, we do this at your venue in person. And it's really a chance for us to listen and hear more about what your priorities are, what's in store for you. And as we listen to you, we're really looking for where the CC Power value proposition of joint action makes sense. And then that again would turn into a menu of work items. We'll also, to try and have more data for any work planning, do a survey to the board to make sure we're gathering information and giving you all time to think about things internally and share with us specifically what you want us working on. We do that at the board, and the board's ultimately deciding that. But it also helps for us to be in parallel working directly with your procurement staffs and making sure we're aligned and getting information and direction from them. A lot of that work occurs through a research planning working group and then culminates with an in-person meeting. This directors meeting is going to occur in March this year. So it's the procurement directors meeting. And that's also a really important meeting where we'll be hoping all of your staff who are appropriate to attend can and will participate. And then we've had great success with using the budget ad hoc committee last year. And my recommendation would be to do that again. And so, Chair Mitchell, I know this is something that you may have thought about, but if there's ever a time where we'd want to form an ad hoc, we could presumably it would be helpful to do that today so that that ad hoc can get started in February.
Yeah, so I think the board has a choice to make. We could form a budget ad hoc today, or we could delegate this to the new officers to come up with that. So any thoughts on those two options? Or
Uh, Point of order, Chair Mitchell, just a
Yeah.
quick question.
sure.
Sometimes people use the term ad hoc committee and they just mean a group. So and maybe this is for council, but does the board need to vote, or is the ability under our bylaws that we can ask the chair to set the ad hoc committee?
I think I can just set it, but correct me if I'm wrong, Josh.
That's correct. It doesn't require a motion.
But what I wanted to kind of get some feedback from the board before I make that decision is one, is anyone interested in the ad hoc, or are people comfortable delegating that to the officers? I myself am comfortable delegating that to the officers who have, regular check-ins with Alex just for efficiency. But, if there are members that want to be on a budget ad hoc and are comfortable with that approach, happy to hear that as well. And happy to form an ad hoc if people are interested. Any thoughts one way or the other?
Chair Mitchell, this is Rob Shaw. For expediency, I think if folks are interested in serving, if they would let yourself or Howard or I know, and then we'll have the officers just establish that ad hoc group or that group.
Sounds like a great plan. Any other
So,
suggestions?
anything else we need to do now? Sorry to interrupt, Lori.
No, if people are fine with, letting me or Rob as your new president, if you want to serve on an ad hoc, that would be great. And we will make that decision shortly on whether to delegate that to the new officers or to form an ad hoc.
Excellent. And so however that works out, I think it's really important for CC Power to work collaboratively with board members. In some ways, this is nitty-gritty work of getting into the guts of the budget process and really making sure that members of the board see how every dollar that goes into the budget really links back to the work plan and is very clearly directed by the board. And that's one of my goals. And ultimately, what this would yield is a proposed budget that shows the following. First would be the overall revenue and spending plan for the year. And that's helpful for me to operate and make sure CC Power, spends less or within budget, and then also know what our revenue goals are, because that's all really what the members have to fund. And then we would also want to explicitly call out any items that need incremental or annual approval. This is always a source of confusion because many of you have signed multi-year contracts with CC Power, and there's going to be costs associated with those, but your boards have already approved those. And it's maybe cumbersome to have your boards reapprove those. So we try and differentiate what's already approved versus what needs incremental approval. And a good example of incremental approval would be annual G&A costs. And so we'll differentiate the incremental versus or annual approval from existing or already approved costs. And then we also want to share any carryover. So as many of you know, the way we operate these multi-year projects is through a project account balance function where we specifically account for any of your dollars we have tagged to a specific project. And in the event that there's excess funds there, those funds are your funds and they can be carried over or given back to you. And so it may help you in your budgeting decisions to know what the carryover is. So we'll have that. The challenge there is that when we approve any budget, say we approve it in May, we'll be estimating what the carryover would be at the fiscal year end at the end of June. And then if members have any other specific needs or information they would want as part of the budget, we would include that as well. And I think the target approval would be May. And you'll see actually, if we can go to the next slide, Stephanie, please. Here's a picture of the schedule of the next few months. And so just on the theme of the budget, you see in the line down there, the third line down, um, with this ad hoc, we'd start meetings in February. We'd come back to the boards with a very early estimated budget so everybody could start to see what the range of numbers could be. That would move into a draft budget and then presumably a draft final budget in May, which would be right for board approval. And that would all be subject to the board's direction and working with the ad hoc. I think it's really important though to see the budget timeline in conjunction with the work planning. Oh, let's go back up, Stephanie. One more up. Yeah, so the work planning, we'd start that in February with these one-on-one meetings with members and a survey. And again, in March, we'd be really starting to flesh out the menu of work that members have expressed interest in. That then turns into a draft work plan or a final work plan that goes along hand in hand with the budget. And that's how the board knows that any work we're doing is really specifically accounted for in the annual work plan and the budget. And that's really always what we're doing to make sure we line up with the board's direction. But one thing I wanted to clarify is in that top line is the strategic plan. So the board has adopted these strategic priorities, and we've been starting to work on mapping out how those priorities show up in the work plan and the prioritization of CC Power over the next handful of years. And so we are updating the strategic plan, and we're trying to include more specific examples of milestones, actions, and implementation strategies for how we would approach prioritizing that work. And that would be sort of an overarching concept that would also inform work planning and make sure, in a way, it would bracket the work plan to make sure we're always doing what's in the strategic plan as directed by the board. And we foresee being able to bring a final draft strategic plan to the board in April. And then lastly, we probably, given all this work coming in March, April, May, expect that we would need board meetings in March, April, May, but not February. February would be a time where we're getting everything in order and starting this work product. So that would be a meeting we could potentially cancel. And Chair Mitchell, let me move quickly through the next couple slides. So looking ahead, I just wanted to share, a big priority for the board going back a couple of years is to really prove out the CC Power model of doing joint procurement, and we're getting closer to that. The Tumbleweed project comes online this spring, and the ribbon cutting is expected to be June 18th, but we'll confirm with you. And so I just wanted to share that for anybody who's participating in that project. This could be an exciting moment to have the first 8-hour lithium ion storage project come online in California. And then lastly, just wanted to disclose some of the GM activity. It's been sort of a normal time of executing on the board's direction. So all of these items in terms of contract updates or agreements have been brought to the board or exist in the work plan. So we've signed the Tenaska scheduling coordinator agreement. We've worked with Ascend on some evaluation or smart bidder work. We've signed to buy the Gridwell Gridwell report through a bulk buy. We've executed on the Wood Mackenzie subscription renewal, and then also in the solicitation that's underway, we've signed the owner's engineer. The engineer helps us with diligence, and so later today, in fact, we'll be sharing with your staff more of the findings from the solicitation. And so we've been doing that valuation work, and we'll be presenting that to your staff, and then your staff helps us know what you might be interested in if there's a joint contracting opportunity there. And so we'll be working with your staff later today on that. And so those results are really just getting finalized. And those also include an assessment of build transfer agreements. And so we're looking at fleshing out the strategic priority of how we approach ownership on your behalf and help this members look at that. And in conjunction, we have some actual project bids that we'll be looking at for you as well. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, Chair Mitchell, and hopefully give the board a feel for what's coming. And I appreciate the chance to update everybody.
Great. Any questions or discussions on this item 60? Okay, I'm not hearing any. We can go to the public comment. Any member of the public wanting to comment on this item? All right, I'm not seeing any. Okay, we are on to item 7, which is discussion of any individual member. Anyone have any individual member items they wanted to discuss? Okay, I'm not hearing any, so we are on to closed session. So hopefully you all received the separate link for closed session. So we will adjourn this meeting and then go into closed session.
Thanks, Chair. And just for members of the public, we will be returning out of closed session to report, but we don't anticipate any reportable action. Thank you. Just for members of the public, we just want to let you know there's no reportable action out of closed session and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.